Hello, this is Candy with eyes2jesus.blogspot.com, and welcome as we continue our study going through the whole book of Isaiah. Today we're up to Isaiah chapter 39. If you are not keeping up with us or this is your first time watching this video, don't worry about catching up. Just jump on in and join the fun. I am reading from the Young's Literal Translation. And today's chapter is actually fairly short. I think it's 8. It is 8 verses. So turn in your Bible if you'd like to follow along to Isaiah chapter 39. And this short chapter has some very important lessons in it. So starting with verse 1, it starts with the 3 words, at that time. At what time? At the time that we finished reading about in our previous study on chapter 38. So at the time, or shortly after, you should say, Hezekiah was healed from the illness that was supposed to kill him, and his years were lengthened by 15 years. So he had the illness unto death, but he survived. That's how the others around the world might have seen it. So at that time, that's at that time. So word got around, okay? So at that time hath Merodach-Baladan, son of Baladan, king of Babylon, sent letters and a present unto Hezekiah, when he heareth that he hath been sick and is become strong. So word even got all the way out to Babylon. And Babylon probably was also pretty happy that Jerusalem didn't fall to the Assyrians, because Babylon was trying to rise up against the Assyrians and trying to get allies to join them in rising up against the Assyrians. So that might be part of, or even the reason why he sent these presents and these letters to King Hezekiah. Now, there wasn't a mail carrier service or a post office, so how were these presents and this letter sent? He sent an envoy from Babylon to Jerusalem, to Hezekiah, to deliver the presents and the letter, and even to visit with them, and he can talk with them for a little bit. But before we get into that, let's just a quick look at these names, because this is a Babylon religion, which these days is still being practiced, but now secretly, as what the Bible calls secret Babylon. Especially, you can read about that in Revelation chapter 17 and 18. But Merodach-Baladan and Baladan. So Baladan by itself basically means the Lord is Bel, B-E-L. Bel's another name for Enki that they used to worship. And Merodach is another way to say Marduk. And in their false god pantheon, basically Marduk ends up taking Enki's place as kind of the head dude of the pantheon. So you see, they're naming their people according to their false gods and their false mystery Babylon religion. Okay, so at that time hath Merodach-Baladan, son of Baladan, king of Babylon, sent letters and a present unto Hezekiah, when he hear that he hath been sick and is become strong. Verse 2, and Hezekiah rejoiceth over them. So he's rejoicing over the stuff, but he's rejoicing over these visitors from Babylon, and showeth them the house of his spices, the silver, and the gold, and the spices, and the good ointment, and all the house of his vessels, and all that hath been found in his treasures. There hath not been a thing in his house, and in all his dominion, that Hezekiah hath not showed them. So he's like, oh, let me give you a tour. Let me show you all my cool stuff, because I have a lot of cool stuff. And he showed them everything. Verse 3, and Isaiah the prophet cometh in unto King Hezekiah, and saith unto him, what said these men, and whence come they unto thee? And Hezekiah saith, from a land afar off they have come unto me, from Babylon. And he saith, what saw they in thy house? And Hezekiah saith, all that is in my house they saw. There hath not been a thing that I have not showed them among my treasures. So we kind of are starting to see inklings of a problem here. In our last study, I referred to Hezekiah as the righteous king who followed God. But he's got too much of a sense of security now. He's not really thinking much now, because he knows that he's got another 15 years added to his life. He's got this whole extra 15 years ahead of him, and he knows that Ashur or Assyria is not going to take them down. So he's feeling secure. His life has been extended. His land is safe. He's got all of his riches. He's thinking, oh, these next 15 years I'm going to be living the good life. So he's showing off his good life to this other country, to Babylon. Not a good idea. He maybe needed to have a bit of foresight to think that showing off all your stuff to people who could end up being enemies in the future may not be a good idea. Okay, so verse 5. And Isaiah saith unto Hezekiah, hear a word of Jehovah of hosts. Lo, days are coming, and born hath been all that is in thy house, and that thy fathers have treasured up till this day to Babylon. And there is not left a thing, said Jehovah. So he said, you know, a day's coming. Babylon's going to want all of your cool stuff, and they're going to take it all. Verse 7, and of thy sons who come forth from thee, whom thou begettest, they take, and they have been eunuchs in a palace of the king of Babylon. Now, where it says, thy sons who come forth from thee, whom thou begettest, that doesn't have to mean direct sons. It could be grandsons. It could be great-grandsons. It can be great-great-grandsons. It means descendants from him. Okay, and it's saying that he's going to have descendants, that when Babylon comes and takes all their stuff, his descendants will be made eunuchs in a palace in Babylon. Verse 8. Okay, so Isaiah said, well, here's what's going to happen. Babylon's going to want your stuff. Babylon's going to think, hey, let's take down the house of Jerusalem. Verse 8, and Hezekiah saith unto Isaiah, what's Hezekiah's reaction to this news? Good is the word of Jehovah that thou hast spoken. And he saith, because there is peace and truth in my days. So he's saying, okay, well, at least there's no peace and truth in my days. I can live it up for these last 15 years of my life. That's fabulous. Oh, so my descendants could be my sons, my grandsons, my great-grandsons, but my descendants, they're going to be eunuchs in the palace, and all this cool stuff that I showed to Babylon, Babylon's going to take away from me. Well, at least it's not happening during the next 15 years, so I guess I'm living it up. So he wasn't seeing the deal. So what is one of many things inferred here that we can learn from this? We can learn that if Hezekiah would have died when he was originally meant to die and not be given those extended 15 years, he would have died a righteous man of God. But now with these extended 15 years, we see he's kind of falling a bit. He's not as high on the righteous meter anymore, right? So we see that also people think, well, if everything goes my way, if I can just have everything I want, have a nice, healthy life, not have anyone bothering me, then it'd be so much more easier to follow God. And we see in Hezekiah's case, that certainly is not the case. Now he's got the easy life for the rest of his life, and it's like he's almost forgetting about God. It's like, yeah, he healed you. He protected your land from Ashur. What are you doing? So for a lot of people, maybe even the majority of people, possibly even in human nature, if life is too easy, if things are just going too well, we might tend to forget that we need God. We might tend to forget that we should be praying to God and communing with God and reading His Word. And maybe we just get a little bit too into ourselves, such as the once righteous King Hezekiah had done. So this concludes our study today from the book of Isaiah. I hope you'll join me next time when we do chapter 40. And meanwhile, have a blessed day.